"You're not welcome in this house," my father bellowed, slamming his fist against the table. "You gave birth? Behind our backs? You filthy little liar." The room froze. Then I heard it. My sister Brielle gasped dramatically. My older brother Chase started to laugh. And my youngest brother Ethan clapped. Actually clapped like it was some sort of reality show. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I was standing barefoot in the living room, holding a sleeping baby boy in my arms, my back pressed against the very door I once hung birthday banners on. "I didn't do anything wrong," I finally whispered. "He's my son." Dad's voice cracked. "And who the hell is his father? Some dropout? A lowlife?" I blinked away tears. "He passed away in a car accident 2 weeks before my due date." My mother, who had been silent the whole time, closed her eyes like she didn't want to hear the rest. That cut deeper than anything. I was 20. I had survived a full pregnancy without support, worked night shifts, lied about college just to keep my dignity. I stayed in a shelter for women for a week after giving birth. I didn't come home to beg. I came because my baby had a high fever and I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted warmth, a roof, a little compassion from the people who were supposed to love me. But all I got was rage. "Get out," Dad growled, stepping forward. "Take your mistake and walk out of my house. You're not my daughter anymore." I swallowed hard. "Dad." I set out. My hands tightened around my baby. His tiny breath warmed my collarbone. I turned to my siblings. Brielle smirked. "Chase?" He actually opened the door for me. "Need help finding the sidewalk?" That was the last thing I heard as the wind hit my face. I stepped out into the dark. The snow was already falling. My arms were numb. I didn't have a coat, just a thin hoodie. My baby whimpered as I wrapped myself tighter around him. No suitcase. No money. No apologies. I disappeared into the night. They never came looking. 13 years later, the black iron gates slowly rolled open. 3 luxury SUVs were parked just outside. And standing in front of them, shivering, confused, and way overdressed, were Brielle, Chase, and Ethan. They hadn't seen me yet, but they were looking straight at my house. Tall, white stone walls, arched windows, a curved driveway lined with trimmed hedges and imported pine trees. It wasn't just a house, it was the kind of place people stopped to take photos in front of. The 3 of them exchanged uneasy looks. Their father, my father, wasn't with them. He had passed 2 months earlier from a stroke. And with him gone, they assumed they were the next heirs to the estate. The big mansion he'd always bragged about, the one they thought he'd quietly moved into during his final years. But what they didn't know, that mansion never belonged to him. A teenage boy stepped out from the front door, tall and athletic, dressed in a sharp black shirt and slacks. His eyes, piercing hazel, froze them in place. He looked exactly like his father. He was 13. And he was mine. They didn't know it yet, but they were staring at the very past they had tried to bury. Then I walked out behind him, head held high, black dress pants, cream blazer, no makeup but every inch composed. Brielle's lip parted. Ethan stepped back. Chase froze completely. My son turned to me and asked calmly, "Are those the people who threw you into the snow?" I nodded once. He stepped back, crossed his arms, and stood tall beside me like a knight beside his queen. I looked at them and smiled just a little. "Welcome to my home," I said. "Funny seeing you all here." Their faces drained of color. And I hadn't even told them the worst part yet. No one spoke. Not Brielle, with her $1,000 clutch. Not Chase, with his slicked back hair and thin patience. Not even Ethan, who always had something to say. They just stood there, blinking, trying to process what the hell was happening. I let the silence stretch. It was delicious. I had waited 13 years for this moment, not out of hate, but because I had learned that real power didn't shout. It whispered. It made people tremble by doing nothing at all. "You'll live here?" Brielle finally said, voice cracking slightly. She tried to smile like she wasn't sweating through her silk blouse. "You work here?" "No," I said plainly. "I own it." Ethan looked between me and the boy beside me. "You're joking." My son tilted his head. Why would she joke about something that's written on every deed in the county courthouse? Chase squinted at him. "Who are you?" I placed a hand gently on my son's shoulder. "This is Adrian," I said. "My son." The silence became heavier. Not because they didn't remember him, but because they did. That baby they laughed at was now taller than them. Sharper. Smarter. Standing in the doorway of the estate they thought would be theirs. "Come inside," I said, turning my back on them. I didn't wait. If they wanted to talk, they'd have to walk through my doors on their own. And they did. They followed me into the grand marble entryway. Their footsteps echoed beneath the 20-foot ceilings. A spiral staircase rose to the second floor. A chandelier hung like a frozen star above them. On the wall beside it, an enormous painting. Of me. Painted in bold, classical strokes. One arm resting across a chair, Adrian standing beside me in a private school blazer. It was a symbol, a message, a declaration. Ethan muttered, "You've got to be kidding." Chase walked up to it slowly. "When did you become this?" I turned. "The moment you all stopped pretending I was family." We sat in the formal lounge. Adrian stood, watching them from the archway like a guardian. He didn't sit. He didn't need to. I poured tea. Not for them. For myself. "So," Brielle tried, fake cheerful. "What's this about?" "We got the attorney's message. Something about a final estate clarification." "Yes," I said, sipping once. "It's about Dad's will. Or rather, the property you assumed he left you." She straightened. "He said it was ours." "He lied," I said. "Because it never was his." Chase's eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you talking about?" I reached over and pulled open a thin folder on the coffee table. Inside were the original deed documents, dating back 16 years. The name on them? Mine. "Dad never bought this house," I said calmly. "He leased it. On credit. The owner defaulted. And I bought it out from under him, quietly, legally, and permanently 8 years ago." Brielle's face dropped. "No. He lived here. As a tenant. I allowed it. Under one condition. He never told anyone who the actual owner was." Ethan's jaw clenched. Why would he agree to that? Because he didn't want to admit that the daughter he threw out owned a roof over his head. They were spiraling now. Chase was sweating. Brielle looked pale. Ethan kept pacing. I leaned back and spoke with purpose. I didn't want revenge. I didn't hunt for it. I just worked. I built. I cried while my son coughed in the dark. I scrubbed bathroom floors in the morning and sold art online at night. I taught myself finance while Adrian slept in my lap. I didn't have lawyers back then. Or friends. I only had one thing. Chase muttered. "What?" I stared at him. Memory. They shifted uncomfortably. Memory of who shut the door on me when I was bleeding. Who laughed when I begged. Who clapped when I was tossed onto the street. Adrian stepped forward now, his voice calm and crisp. "And now, we remember you." He slid another file onto the table. Brielle opened it, hands trembling. Her lips moved silently as she read the numbers. Her mansion. Her summer house. Her designer brand investments. All foreclosed. All bought. All quietly acquired by a firm under my name. "You took everything?" Ethan asked, eyes wide. I stood. "No. I earned everything. The fact that it happened to include everything you thought you'd inherit." I shrugged. "Coincidence." Brielle looked broken now. "So, what happens now?" I paused. "You're here because I'm deciding what kind of woman I want to be." Adrian looked up at me. "And what are you choosing?" I smiled, softly. "The kind who doesn't forget, but also the kind who won't become like them." They looked confused. "I'm giving you one house back," I said. "The old one. On the condition that you never speak my name in hate again." Not to each other. Not to the world. And not to Adrian. Ever. Chase looked stunned. Why would you do that? I locked eyes with my son. Because I raised a man I'm proud of. And I won't teach him to hate. Chase finally broke the silence. So, what now you're just the bigger person? You're throwing charity at us. I looked at him. No. I'm offering closure. What you do with it is your business. Brielle shook her head, voice soft. I can't believe this. All these years, you were building this empire while we thought you disappeared. I met her gaze. I did disappear. You made sure of it. Ethan leaned on the windowsill, still avoiding eye contact. Why didn't you say something? Come back earlier? Adrian turned toward him. Why would she? So you could mock her again. Ethan looked away. I stepped closer, keeping my tone calm. I came back now because Dad's death ended the silence. The truth had to come out. Not for revenge. For justice. Chase muttered. You think you're some saint now? No, I said, but I know who I am. And I'm not the broken girl you threw out. Adrian asked, Can I speak to them alone? I blinked. Are you sure? He nodded. They need to hear this. I stepped out. Through the slightly cracked door, I heard his voice. You clapped when I was thrown out into the cold. I didn't choose to be born. But I grew up watching her rebuild her life while carrying me on her back. You didn't just hurt her, you tried to erase her. He paused. But I'm living proof she couldn't be erased. Silence. Then he walked out of the room, calm as ever. I'm done, he said to me. They know what they need to know. And as the sun dipped below the trees, I knew that for the first time in 13 years, we were no longer the ones who had to carry shame. They were. They didn't leave right away. They just lingered. Stunned. Like guests at a wedding where they suddenly realized they were never on the guest list. Chase was the first to stand. His mouth opened, as if he had something to say, something rehearsed, maybe. But no words came out. He just nodded to himself, jaw tense, and walked toward the front door. Brielle remained seated, fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. She looked up at me, eyes less arrogant now, more uncertain. Why him? She asked softly. Why does Adrian speak like he's seen the world already? I stepped forward. Because he has. Not in distance, but in struggle. He's seen what it's like to sleep in a car. To eat oatmeal 5 days in a row. To be looked down on just because of who his mother was. Ethan finally turned from the window. You really went through all that? I nodded. And more. But I never let him see me break. Not once. Brielle's voice wavered. We were told you ran off with some guy. That you didn't want us. I raised my brows. That's what he told you? That I abandoned you? Chase had stopped near the door, overhearing us. He turned. We were fed a story. A selfish girl, a mistake she couldn't fix, and a family she walked away from. I almost laughed. Of course you were. It made it easier for him. Easier to not face what he did. Ethan asked carefully, What did he do? I inhaled slowly. He threw out his daughter in a blizzard, knowing she had nowhere to go. And then he lied about it for over a decade. That's what he did. Brielle swallowed hard. I think part of me knew, but I didn't want to believe it. I know, I said gently but firmly. And believing a lie doesn't make you innocent. It just makes you complicit. They sat in silence again. But this time it wasn't the silence of pride or defiance. It was something closer to regret. I didn't bring you here to destroy you, I said. But you needed to see the difference between who you thought I was and who I became. Chase finally looked me in the eye. So what now? You take your house. You sign the agreement. And you leave Adrian and me out of your mouths for the rest of your lives. Ethan looked like he might cry. And if we want to make things right? I paused. You don't get to decide when you're forgiven. That's not how healing works. Brielle's eyes filled. So, we have no chance? You had 13 years, I said. Now you'll have to wait. Just like I did. Adrian stepped back into the room. They're done, he said softly, looking only at me. I gave a single nod. And one by one they left, not with power, not with property, but with the weight of a truth they could never twist again. 3 days later, the papers were signed. I didn't go to the lawyer's office. I let them handle it alone. They took the old family house, nothing more. I made sure of that. A single property. No titles, no shares, no inheritance. Just a roof over their heads and a boundary they were never allowed to cross again. I wasn't being cruel. I was setting limits. The kind of limits they never gave me. Adrian and I sat on the back patio that evening. The sun was sliding down behind the hills. He was quiet as usual, but I could feel his thoughts pressing against the silence. "You okay?" I asked, handing him a cup of tea, something he'd picked up for me. No sugar, no milk, just strong, honest tea. He nodded. "I'm just thinking." "About them?" He shrugged. "A little. I guess I thought it'd feel better, seeing them like that." "And does it?" He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "They looked so empty. Not angry, not proud, just lost." I nodded, staring out at the gold-tipped horizon. That's what happens when you build your life on lies. Eventually the floor gives out.
He sipped his tea.
"Do you think they'll ever change?" I let that sit in the air for a few seconds. "I don't know, but I know we did." He looked at me, and for the first time in days, he smiled just a little. "Yeah, we did." I smiled back. "And we don't owe anyone an explanation for it." We sat in silence for a few minutes more. The wind rustled the hedges. Somewhere, a distant car drove by. The world kept moving. Eventually, he leaned back in the chair and said, "You know what the crazy part is?" "What?" "I'm not even mad anymore." That caught me off guard. "You're not?"
"No."
"I just feel proud. Like they tried to erase us. But here we are. You gave me everything. They gave me nothing. But I still don't hate them." I felt my throat tighten. He continued, "I think that's what makes us different." I reached over and placed my hand on his. "They taught me how to survive," I said. "But you taught me how to live again." That night, we walked the hallways of the house we'd built together, from nothing. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture, every light bulb was a reminder that we had been cast out, but we never stayed gone. We returned not with vengeance, but with strength. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. Not to destroy, but to rise. And somewhere far across the city, in a dimly lit kitchen filled with silence and shame, the people who once clapped at my pain were finally, for the first time in their lives, facing the truth. Alone.